All right, welcome everybody to our webinar for Trends and Predictions for Online Advertising, hosted by Penn Marketing, featuring some special guests from Moz and Mobile Monkey. We're going to dive into some juicy topics today, like how will machine learning and AI impact the digital marketing industry. We'll talk a little bit about some content saturation and rising CPCs. I'm Cassie Oumedian. I'm with Penn Marketing. With me today, we have some digital marketing celebrities. I don't mind if I have my groupie face on today. That I'm here with Fishkin from Moz and Larry Kim from Mobile Monkey. So with that, let's just kind of take a few minutes to introduce each other and get everybody familiar with one another. So I don't know if Rand, you want to kick it off and fill everybody in on your background?
Yeah. Cassie, I really appreciate you having me, and big fan of you and the folks at Penn. Have had a bunch of great times visiting y'all out in Minneapolis. So yeah, I'm Rand Fishkin. I'm the founder of Moz and co-founder of Moz, co-founder of inbound.org, working on a new startup, TBD, and author of an upcoming book called Lost and Founder. And my passion and area of expertise and interest has classically been organic marketing, but I have not been immune to the effects of the paid world either. And certainly, Moz has built up a healthy paid media practice internally, and I get to spend lots of time around digital marketing folks like Larry, who are very, very well versed on this topic. So hopefully can contribute some of my naivete around digital marketing, paid digital marketing. And
give me a break. Give me a break.
So modest.
Give me a break. Not so good at others. I know where I play. Good at cooking, bad at baking.
Perfect. And how about you, Larry?
Sure. I'm Larry Kim. I'm the founder of a company called WordStream. It's one of the world's largest pay-per-click advertising software companies, managing, a gazillion, billion dollars of ad spend annually for tens of thousands of customers worldwide. And about 7 or 8 months ago, I stepped down there and working on a new startup in the exciting chatbot AI space. And maybe if you're interested later, I can tell you a little more of that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the introduction and a little bit about myself. So I'm Cassie Oumedian. I'm with Penn Marketing. Like I said, I'm kind of a veteran of the PPC agency world. I've been at Penn for about 5 years. I'm one of the associate directors. I focus on growth, helping grow our clients' business. I work with some teams across search, social, CRO. So definitely have more of a foothold in the PPC space. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more, especially from both of you, obviously across both platforms, but a little bit more about the SEO and content side of things as well. And that's it for me. So moving on, so a little bit more about Penn. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Penn brands, we have several brands. So Penn Marketing runs one of the world's most popular PPC blogs and conference. So if you're not familiar with PPC Hero, you should get out there and check it out. We blog all the time about all new industry updates, anything regarding PPC and digital marketing, advertising, all kinds of good stuff. Really try to focus on educating the industry as a whole. And then we also have our Hero Conf, which we have our Hero Conf Austin coming up April 16th through the 18th. So if you are interested, we would love to have you guys out there and come visit it. I know Larry and Rand, both of you have attended these HeroConf events before, and are either of you attending in Austin this year?
I think that tragically I was not able to make it this year, but yeah, great show. Agreed.
Yeah, it's awesome. This is my first year away because I'm doing the startup thing. I have to.
Oh man.
Actually, I have to build stuff. It's hard.
Oh man, it's a tough go. I know. Like I said, this year we're back in Austin. This is we were in Austin a few years ago, and we're excited to be back there. So that's going to be happening in April 16th through the 18th.
Cool.
So a little bit more about Hannafin. So we have some exciting brands that we work with too, just to touch base on some of them, like the Weather Channel, Iceland Air, American Eagle Outfitters. Highlights are some of the ones that we work on. So they're great clients. We do a lot of PPC, some social, all kinds of stuff for them, and so just wanted to share some of that with you guys today. So moving on, talking about joining the conversation. So this is going to be kind of a more informal discussion. We really would like to get your questions from the audience here. So be sure to tweet us at ThinkPPC, and we'll try to answer your questions. If they make sense while we're talking through some of these, we're going to try to float them in while we're talking live. If not, we'll save them for the end and try to get to as many as possible. I know we're going to have some great discussions between, Rand and Larry and myself, and so we're going to do our best to get to all of the questions, but if we don't, we'll be sure to try to follow up with you guys and any outstanding questions that you may have. So again, be sure to follow the conversation at ThinkPPC.
Oh, I see a question I'm already getting on Twitter.
Oh, really?
Is my office cold? Yes.
Is your office cold? Yep, his new, what did you say, your new shed office, right? Is that?
Slash office, yeah.
Yep, we were chatting earlier. I'm in a balmy 50-degree day in Michigan today, where it was -18 on Friday, and today it is 50 degrees outside. So it's pretty typical, actually, this time of year.
Madness.
Yeah. So moving along, we have our first poll, live poll question that talks about how long have you been in online advertising? So with this question in particular, I know both of you obviously have been around the industry for a while. Rand, how long have you been in the industry?
Let's see, I dropped out of college in 2001 and basically started working with my mom, Jillian, who Larry recently ran into. And
fun.
So I guess I would say somewhere between 16 and 17 years. I'm not sure I was in online advertising my very first year, but I was at least building websites and that sort of thing.
Oh, pretty cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Larry?
I'm a newcomer here. I've only been here for 9 years. I actually started WordStream in 2008. So by that time, the industry had all these it was already pretty far along. So.
Agree to disagree. I would say you are still very early in the grand scheme of things.
I would have to agree as well. I know I'm, like I mentioned earlier, I'm probably going, I guess I'm 10 years now in the industry myself too. So we definitely have some veterans in here. I'm just curious, just share with the team, the audience here. What are some of the biggest lessons you would say that you've learned throughout your career over the years?
Specifically related to online ads?
Yeah, specifically, yeah, to online ads.
One lesson that I've learned, and Larry, I know that you have spoken passionately about this as well, and I've found it to be true not just with Moz, but all the other startups I work with, or things I've invested in, or that kind of thing. And that is, it is very, very difficult for most companies to get good ROI from online advertising if their brand is not already known and liked by an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Because online advertising just amplifies kind of the brand essence, which has a lot to do with just how people feel about your products and services. So absolutely.
Yeah. So I see tons of people, who build something and then think that they can use advertising as their sort of first way to reach customers. And generally speaking, that is really, really hard. It's not impossible. There's some niches where it does work, and there's always caveats, but most of the time I see people start to pour dollars and effort into online ads and they're frustrated with the ROI, and my response is, yeah, you got to get known and liked before the advertising works.
Pretty much.
That's a good point. What about you, Larry?
Can I just second that and let's move on?
We can go ahead and do that. No, that makes sense. It looks like we've got quite a mix of people joining us today. We have about less
Okay.
than 33%, less than 30 or less than 3 years. Majority are falling right in that 3 to 10 year mark. So definitely have a variety of people joining the call. We have some,
Yeah, but a bunch of veterans too. Look at
yeah,
that,
I
10 to
see that. Look
15
at
and
that.
15 plus years.
15 plus years. That's
Oh
pretty
my God.
impressive. Oh, so careful what we say.
That's right. I will try not to insult Lycos and Alta Vista, just to make sure that we're showing respect.
There you go. Well, perfect. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start jumping into some of these questions. So, as I mentioned, we have some great topics to talk about today, covering specifically, as I said, how machine learning and AI will impact online advertising in 2018, the oversaturation in content marketing, the rising costs of CPCs across online advertising as well. And then if we have time, we're going to hope to get into some lightning rounds of kind of what's next in terms of trends and predictions for 2018 across the various channels in digital marketing. So
Great.
perfect. If that works for you guys, we can go ahead and jump into some questions.
Good.
So the first topic that I wanted to touch on, again, is probably the one that's going to probably eat up a bulk of our time today, and kind of leads in maybe to the content saturation piece a bit as well. But it's the how will machine learning and AI impact our online advertising in 2018? And I think before we jump into this topic, that's it's kind of the new buzzword in the industry, and I think, it does. I don't know, does everybody fully have a good understanding of what is machine learning to you, and just making sure
Yeah.
everybody's on the same page. So I'm
So
just
how about
curious.
I'm happy to give a little brief background on that. If Larry is
Perfect.
happy to be the first one to tackle the actual question of how it's going to impact, because I think you'll answer than I will on that.
I like
Sure.
this, playing fair.
Yeah, exactly. We each make half the pie.
There you go.
So basic story with machine learning and AI, and Moz does a little bit of this. I actually sit with and work with a few of our engineers on ML projects. So the idea is that essentially you have a problem that you're trying to solve, and you know that there's some combination of pathways and inputs, algorithms, potentially solutions to this problem that a computer or a human being could solve, right? But a human being is going to do it pretty manually. We're going to try and figure out, well, here's all the potential inputs that we think we could use, and then let's try it this way with weighting these inputs in this fashion, and then we'll try it another way. And machine learning is essentially taking that human process of trial and error and sorting these things out and automating it, right? So machines are trying to figure out, hey, which inputs should we use at which weightings in order to get the best result, best outcome. So if you're trying to understand speech patterns of a human being, you might have a giant training set of tons of people with all sorts of different accents and cadences saying a phrase, and then trying to get a machine to interpret it and know what the words actually are, so that it can make a transcript of that or understand the question in a case like Alexa or something like that. And so the machine is actually taking all these inputs and then learning on its own which inputs to use. And then you get into, I'm not sure this is totally technically AI, but you get into deep learning, right, which is using neural networks and these types of things. And that's where you don't specify the inputs to the machine. The machine will figure out its own inputs, right? It learns on its own. It's unsupervised learning on its own which things predict, are going to work well to get a good result. And that's sort of the very basic 2-minute story around ML and the start of AI. But formal AI is even much deeper than that. But
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think that's a great explanation in terms of how it relates to online advertising. It's always been a part of online advertising. So when AdWords came out in early 2000s, It needed to audition your ads. It didn't manually review every ad. It needed to figure out the targeting and the pricing within the first like 100 or 200 impressions. And so that's just like, it's not like organic where they crawl the entire web and come up with an index and score. Like they have to score all this stuff on the fly. And so they're just doing all this prediction and auditioning, and it had a lot like quality score is a machine learning algorithm and basically that kind of predicts kind of the ad performance. And so that's always been with us in the paid side. I'd say what's you know, and Facebook, of course, copied that. They have relevancy score, which is, you know, just predicting whether or not the ad makes sense to show to people and how much to charge them for it. And so, you know, it just, I think what's changing is just that they're weighting it more. So like, you get into a situation where, like, you know, on Facebook ads, the difference between like pricing is like, you know, it could be like 1 penny or $5, like depending on like, you know, so they've kind of dialed up the weighting of how much they're leaning on this to kind of filter out the noise.
Okay. No, that's perfect. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to kind of redefine that. I feel like people maybe aren't sure the exact meaning of it. They're kind of buzzwords and thrown out there. So just to kind of get everybody on the same page in terms of what do these terms actually mean and how are they in coordination of how they work within digital advertising.
Yeah, as far as 2018 goes, so I think one thing on the organic side specifically that will impact the paid side very heavily is I'm sure you all see on the social networks, right? So Facebook is extremely heavy on this front. Twitter, I think, is getting there a little bit, but they will essentially reward through, you know, machine learning systems that deliver the results that the company is looking for, right? So in Facebook's case, they're looking for the highest possible engagement, the most time that you spend on Facebook's site, and probably with some, you know, drizzled in that you're clicking on advertising. The thing that Facebook would prefer you really don't do is leave Facebook or click on a link that's in, you know, an organic piece of content and go away from Facebook, right? So your friend shared something, you think it's really interesting, so you click on the link that they shared. That's a great use of Facebook for marketers, especially for organic focused marketers, but it's a terrible thing for Facebook, the corporation. And therefore, you see that organic reach, right, and the click-through rate on links and all these kinds of things has gone down and down and down over time. And content that is native to Facebook, right, posts of your friends' baby photos, you know, Facebook native videos, those kinds of things that do a really good job of keeping you on Facebook get rewarded. And then the other thing that gets rewarded is the ads, especially the ads that earn high engagement. And so I think you can think of all these social networks, some of them doing a better and worse job, right? Twitter, obviously, not yet dampening the influence of links, but I have a suspicion that's coming this year, actually. And I think, yeah, I think that's happening. I think LinkedIn is doing the same thing.
Oh, they definitely. That's no, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I have run my own experiments on that one, and the engagement suffers when you include the links.
Yeah, and you know, and so you have to choose, right? You have to choose how you want to use these platforms. Do you want to be at the algorithmic mercy of these, you know, machine learning systems and suffer the consequences of sharing a link, but say, you know what, me earning 50 visits instead of 500 views is vastly more worthwhile? Or do you want to play the game and sort of build up your engagement and potentially your following on these networks and then sort of earn greater reach inside the network, greater exposure to the people on LinkedIn, the people on Twitter, the people on Facebook? It's a tough battle, right? And I think a smart marketer is going to have to choose what works best for them. But for me, I'm going to try and play both sides, right? I want to get my big streaks going to grow my engagement, my following, and then I want to pull back sometimes and say, you know what, just give me the whatever traffic I can get. I'll try and maximize that, even knowing that these algorithms don't love and reward me for it.
So Rand, I'm an algorithm chaser. I'm like, don't fight it. Don't fight it. Just like do whatever Google says jump, jump. Like Facebook says jump.
So wait, Larry, for like your new startup, right? What's your sort of strategy around sharing content on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, are you just thinking, no, I'm not even going to try to share offsite content. I'm really just trying to build my brand on these platforms?
Relative to my last startup WordStream, I think the blog will have a diminished importance substantially than like this time around versus the last time. So, like, but it replaced by like kind of like copies of that blog floating around, like in LinkedIn posts or in Facebook groups or that kind of stuff, because that's where they're pushing the engagement to. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no argument. I guess
I'm not going to get rid of the blog, but I think that the relative prominence of it will be diminished, because like all the like 70-80% of your traffic comes from Facebook and Google, right? So what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, well, this is why I think it's tough, right? Like feel like you can build up an audience and engagement on these platforms now, but depending on what they do in the future, if for some reason it comes into conflict with how you want to build that engagement, or you choose not to, or there's things that you can do on your site that you can't do, on their site, or you're just not getting the conversions, you're sort of in a rock and a hard place there, between a rock and a hard place. So, I mean, my philosophy has always been play the game a little bit, and then be willing to suffer a little bit in the chase the algorithm game in order to earn, to eke out whatever traffic you can from these networks, so that you can build some engagement and some, audience on your own website, which is, far more valuable, in my opinion, right? Like, I'd rather have 100 people email subscribed to my blog than 10,000 people Facebook liking my page.
Oh, absolutely. Like no argument. It's just the extent. So I'm totally agreeing with that point. I'm saying the extent of how much do you said you're kind of playing both fields here. Like, what's the relative proportional allocation of, like, on-site versus
do you feel like you can, like, use that ML system to your advantage by essentially getting a big streak going, right? Getting a high streak of engagement going on Facebook posts or on LinkedIn, for example, or Twitter, and then sort of at the end of that streak, being willing to slash your streak with and here's my, call to action thing I want you to visit on my site. And that one post will do pretty well because of the history of your streak. Yeah, and it hurts your engagement next time, but, like, you can kind of play that game, right? So streak,
and then
hard sell. Hard sell, yeah.
So like, there's also stupid loopholes like that. Like, you can, like, don't include the link in your LinkedIn post, but then include it in the first comment. Like,
totally.
So that's your top secret workaround. So tip of the day from Larry.
That's
the way to.
I love it.
Larry, sneak in those links in the
it's
comments.
It's like the Instagram, link in bio thing, where you make people click your profile and then go to it, but whatever the picture is so compelling that you just have to see the next thing. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's just like a cat and mouse game.
Cool. Well, kind of bringing back to the question, Rand, you kind of said you didn't want to answer that question first, but I feel like you kind of went into a little bit what my first question was going to be. So diving into this topic a little bit more in depth, and I wanted to get both of your opinions on this, is more along the lines of, really, what is your perception of what's really happening with machine learning and AI in 2018? And more specifically, like, what areas do you think of it are maybe more hype? And if there's any areas that are maybe sneaky, kind of sneaky, I guess, in a sense of what I was thinking, or things that that are not being spoken about as much, that could creep up and bite us if we're not prepared for. And so, Larry, I don't know if you want to have any input or want to kick off.
So what's happening is everything is being converted from these heuristic algorithms to ML algorithms. So, like, just give me an example. Keyword targeting in Google, like, they're kind of getting rid of the match types, more or less, like, because exact match, phrase match, like those were constructs where the machine wasn't really smart enough to figure this stuff out, and now they're just kind of saying they're more or less the same, like, just use one. Okay. Another one is bid management. So they're able to come out with all sorts of different, bid management things. Like, it's crazy. Like Facebook ads doesn't really have any manual bidding options. Really, it's all automatic. In fact, in Facebook, the initial targeting that you specify for ads, like if you say, like, I want to hit people who are fans of moms or something like this, like, that's just a suggestion. That's not an actual, like, a declaration. That's just like they're going to start auditioning their that's your first guess,
and it's a very high one usually.
No more hard rules. There's only soft rules.
The platforms will figure it out from them. So basically all this manual targeting and stuff like this, where you have to kind of come up with a grand idea and try to figure it out, like, that's all being pushed down in the stack, and they're just letting the computers figure it out. And just to answer the other question, which was like, what are kind of the pitfalls and the sneaky things going on? Well, it's a kind of this cat and mouse game. One problem is just like fraud. Okay, so like people taking note of how the algorithms work, and then in gaming the system, like the Russians with their Facebook ads, able to push all these hot button issues and get tremendous exposure for like free, essentially. And another way that they're doing it is like click fraud in the Google Display Network. So click fraud, whenever there's an ad network, there's always click fraud. But these dumb click fraud bot networks have noticed that the bid algorithms give more traffic to high converting sites. So these click farms now employ either machines or people to just fill out forms on people's sites so that more money is put their way. You see what I'm saying? So there's all sorts of it's like they're still figuring it out. There's also, they didn't make these changes so that it would be better for fraudulent bots to take advantage of unsuspecting advertisers, or for nation states to game elections. But there are a lot of these new problems that are coming up by the replacement of algorithms, which used to be based on kind of rules, to more ones that are kind of more unstructured. Rand, what would you think?
Yeah. I mean, we see this on the organic side as well, right? Like Google organic and Facebook organic, to your point around sharing fake content or untrue content that triggers emotions or that biases voting patterns or those types of things. That stuff is gameable in all sorts of ways. Marketers do it sometimes, not even necessarily for evil, but they do it thoughtfully, right? So media properties will identify, hey, there's a lot of search around this keyword. If we can produce a salacious story, right, one that is of great interest, that drives a lot of social engagement and sharing behaviors and traffic, we know that Google will put in the news panel, right, on the organic set of results. That can often be in the top 2 or 3 positions, sometimes even above everything else. And as a result, we can drive a tremendous amount of traffic that was previously just searching for, whomever it was, right, a celebrity or a particular topic, and we can drive a lot of that interest to our website, and now we can, monetize that traffic. And so there's various degrees of white hat and black hat methods to use these, but I think smart marketers will recognize that they don't want to burn their brand. They don't want to burn their reputation with visitors or with Google, right? They are not willing to, to use an extreme example, swing one election, but then have the FBI look into them, right? So, or the equivalent internally at Google or Facebook or those kinds of things. And you can see lots of those publishers, right, who Facebook, I mean, BuzzFeed being an excellent example of someone where we don't love how you're gaming the quiz system. We don't love how you're gaming video. We don't love how you're gaming GIF images. And so pulling back on those systems and then having BuzzFeed be at their mercy. But I think that there's more of that to come in 2018. I think people are going to keep testing those boundaries. There's a great piece on, gosh, who was it? It was just published yesterday. Let me find that. About how people were gaming Instagram. Yeah, in The Atlantic. The Strange Brands in Your Instagram Feed is the title of the piece. And it was pretty excellent, right? It talked about how essentially they build up this virtual look of being, hipster high quality clothing manufactured in the US, and then would essentially use drop shippers primarily from Asia, where there's low cost clothing manufacturing, to send you very low quality stuff, and then essentially game the Instagram advertising platforms and Facebook ad platforms to make that work really well.
Yeah, big algorithm shifts mean big opportunities.
Yeah. Well, and tons of people paying attention, tons of traffic, right? You're going to get that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I just had a quick question, Larry, when you talk about the bots and the fake sites and that is that something that obviously it sounds like we're seeing that more probably like in lead gen type stuff because it's easier for them to do that. Are you noticing anything in the ecom side as well, or just more lead gen?
No, you just have to make it so that it's really, really damn hard to fire that conversion pixel.
Yeah.
Make if it's just behind a form, then it's not really a high hurdle to climb over.
So yeah, to fix that, I can see that. Perfect. All right. So just another question real quick on the same topic while we're on it, and then we can move on to some other stuff here is really, so, we talked a lot about kind of what's the hype, what are some sneaky things going on here. So we've all determined that, machine learning and AI is part of as part of online advertising. It always has been. It's going to continue to be. So how can we position ourselves as online advertisers to more so work with it instead of against it? And I don't know if, Rand, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or.
Well, I mean, to the point that we were making earlier around being an algorithm chaser, I think that, the only thing that I would say maybe that's constructive around this is why, if you are in the online advertising world or the digital marketing world broadly, you have to actually pay attention to sort of the news and the blogosphere and the undercurrent of discussion from savvy digital marketers. I know that there's this sort of weird thing I've observed in the digital marketing space, where people who pay attention to organic seem to sort of be chasing the latest news and update, and yet people who are doing digital advertising are less worried about that, right? They think, oh, the only thing I really need to know is, how does the platform perform and what things are working for me and not. And I would urge you actually to invest a portion of your week every week in staying up to date, in following the experiments people are doing, in reading what else is out there, in following some smart people on Twitter who, share stuff about this. I actually do believe that will make you better at your job. It will give you avenues of testing and experimentation. It'll help you understand what's going on in these platforms and these algorithm changes. And that matters just as much in digital advertising as it does on the organic side.
Just to try to summarize what Rand was just saying, he's suggesting that PPC marketers, my people, should think more like they should think more like content marketers. In that, so PPC marketers, they get stuck in this thing where you run the same ads forever, or it's just like you just set up a campaign and it runs for the full year or something like this. And if you can be a little bit more topical, a little bit just more relevant, like oh, there's a Game of Thrones thing going on this weekend, so like how can we insert ourselves into this conversation around this thing? Then you'll see the boost in engagement, and your campaigns will do a lot better because the engagement is being rewarded more. In terms of like what's being replaced and what parts will stay, I'm afraid like pretty much all the tools that Google rolled out like in the 2000s around like day parting or all this kind of targeting of like match types or bid management or nitty gritty settings like device targeting and stuff like this. Like this is all this is all silly, and it's going away. The only thing that's going to stay is basically creative, like your message,
Yep.
and your guarantee, your unique selling proposition, and so that's kind of I think what Rand was kind of talking about when he's saying focus on getting some new ideas, because that's harder to automate.
No, and that makes sense. And that actually kind of covered one of the other questions that I had in there was along the lines of, what are some of the things that we see sticking around or that are going to kind of be harder for machine learning or AI to take over. And the creative part that's a part that no matter how hard I feel like we try to automate that part of it, you still need that kind of creative input behind it. So I see like making sure that we're focusing more, as PPC and in online advertising, pulling away more from the manual bidding and all that type of stuff, and really focusing our efforts on the content marketing, the creative and the ads, and that part is really where to focus moving forward in 2018, and then some. Perfect. So I know we spent a lot of time on that topic, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic here, and we're going to talk about how to deal with oversaturation in content marketing. And I know this is a topic that Rand, I think you have some experience maybe and some thoughts on this particular topic. So my question to both of you is, the first one kind of just to kick it off is really like, what's your just overall opinion on content saturation? How are you seeing it impact your online advertising efforts?
So let's see, I'm going to say I think it is in some areas it's overblown, in that there is not a glut of high quality, interesting, worthwhile stuff to follow. And yet somehow this idea of content oversaturation is scaring people away from even trying to create that material. And that's dumb. That's bad. I think that the thing that I would say is where content saturation, I think, has proven to be incredibly true, is that I would almost call it interaction saturation, in that there's so much competition for human attention on digital devices that it is much harder to earn a click or earn an engagement of any kind, of an advertising click, an organic click, with a human being who's alive and in the digital world today than 5 years ago, than 10 years ago, than 15 years ago. And I think that trend will do nothing but speed up. So
interesting.
When you're thinking about content marketing, right, and the creation of content, the creative side of advertising, I would not be too discouraged. I think that in many sectors, people are not doing nearly as good a job as we think they are. And there's tremendous opportunity if you are innovative and thoughtful and truly interesting and worth paying attention to, right? If you have something novel to say and novel to share that resonates with your audience, there's opportunity. What I would say is you better be prepared for the fact that on every platform, 1,000 followers is not worth what 1,000 followers was last year, and it will be worth even less in years to come, right? And that's because the engagement levels, the biasing of these networks, the ability to drive traffic from them is getting more and more difficult. So, two sides of the same coin.
So I'm a little more pessimistic. I think it's a huge problem, Rand. I think, just starting a new business and trying to rank on keywords and and then get a big social profile today. Oh my God, it's like a suicide mission compared to what it was
back in the day. Yeah.
a decade
Comparatively.
ago. And so look, it requires a complete rethink of your strategy, nothing less than that. It used to be you would get participation points just for showing up. Like as long as you had 3 tweets a day and 1 LinkedIn post a week and 3 blogs a week, you would get participation points, and that would get you like to 75 percentile of success. You know what I mean? It's not like that anymore. It's winner take all. It's like the if you look at like if you look at your own blog or for the Moz blog or any, well, Moz is a little unusual because you guys have a tighter distribution, but if you look at like a blog like Business Insider or Inc. magazine, what you'll see is like just compare it like the social shares from this year to last year. It's like this year, like the top 5 articles got more shares than like every other article on the freaking site for the year. If you go back a year or two, it was like much more of an equal distribution, and so it's not only is it oversaturated, the way that these machine learning algorithms are kind of responding to like this clutter is they're leaning more on those engagement algorithms to kind of filter out like 1 or 2 things, and it ends up like being like Powerball, winner take all, instead of like scratch tickets where everyone's a little winner. You know what I'm saying? So like, it just means we need a new strategy, and I think the strategy is just I call it like unicorn, focusing on your unicorns. Like usually if you've got 10 blog posts or something like this, like there's usually one or that's doing a little bit better than the other, or like 3, 4, 5. Like usually like a few posts, like Moz has this guide to SEO that does remarkably well, much better than the average new blog post. You see what I'm saying? So like what you do is you just keep creating content as you would, but every once in a while you get these outliers that are like do unusually well. And what I'm saying is like, well, that's the one where you make your stand. You see what I'm saying? So instead of providing equal resources and efforts to push and promote and every piece, you find the outlier and then go all in on that one piece.
So on social, I really agree with you. I think that is absolutely true. On the organic search side, I think I'm going to disagree. I believe that, whatever, the 10x content, right, that can perform really well is sometimes needed. But I think a lot of the time, it's actually, what, I think Ross Hudgens was actually sharing
2x content.
Yeah,
like,
content, right? Why the 2x content works?
Why not 3? Why not 3?
3, 10, 6.
Yeah.
2.5.
Yeah, so I would urge folks who are interested in the SEO side, like, why is producing slightly better or considerably better, but not 10x, not true unicorns? Why does that work well in SEO? And I think the short answer is basically that Google will reward better stuff in their search rankings pretty quickly, and so you don't need the 1,000 shares versus 2 shares on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn to win those battles, at least not in a lot of sectors, especially in the long tail and mid.
Rand, I can algorithmically prove what you're saying. So
I would expect nothing less, Larry.
so I spent a lot of time looking at data, and the biggest boost that you get from engagement comes from when you're on the cusp of going from below average to above average. Okay, so like if the average content engagement rate like for time on site is 4 minutes, we'll say, okay, if you go from 3.5 minutes to 4.5 minutes, then you've got like 66% of the boost. And if you then 10x that engagement rate to like 30 minutes on site, it's not like you get a 30 times increase. It's like it's diminishing. So there is some truth over, like, I call them upper class donkeys. Russ calls them like 2x content. Like, I don't know what they're called.
Upper class donkeys. That's a good one.
What we're suggesting here is kind of like just enough to kind of check the box and get the lion's share of the algorithmic award. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I will say one other point that I want to make that I think really agrees with what you were saying before is the winner take all thing. We see that in Google as well, where essentially a site that builds up a reputation for having high quality content consistently can produce and can regularly produce it, keeps winning in the search results, because there's this algorithmic bias to, oh, this domain has served people in this niche really well previously, so let's rank their content there again, right? Moz benefits from this a lot. We have a lot of content that does really well, so even if there's like kind of a crummy Q&A post that someone left a year ago, but it's on a long tail topic, we might rank #1 for that, even with no links and very little engagement, because Google thinks, oh, Moz, you're relevant to this topic, you've earned lots of engagement in the past. So there is that kind of, the I don't know what to call it, like the late stage capitalism concept applies to everything in online advertising and digital marketing too, where essentially, the vast majority of the gains go to the top 10% and the top 1%. And then everyone else is sort of left by the wayside. And that's just how algorithmic rewards, and the fact that there is a top 10 ranking with #1 getting the most clicks and #2 getting the second most, that model is going to naturally create that. But the algorithmic element of whatever, the theory of domain authority, not the actual domain authority score that Moz puts out, but the concept of domain authority bolsters that even more.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. The domain authority, well, whatever we're calling it, this thing,
Yeah.
The main quality score, if you will, I mean, there's an explanation for this. It's that machine learning cannot possibly compute like every permutation of landing page and query, from different locations, from different devices, and so it needs to guess. And so,
that's right.
in the absence of data, what you do is you aggregate. You say, well, these other pages on the site, did so well, and that's in fact, Cassie, why quality score now in AdWords, if you have like these branded keyword terms that have 40% click-through rates, that's actually going to like boost your non branded keywords quality scores, just because it averages.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I appreciate you got kind of the back and forth and the agreement and disagreement. It always keeps it exciting when we're not all like, oh, I agree with you and I agree with you. And so definitely good to get all kinds of perspectives. And just one last question on this topic, and then we'll move on to the next one, is where I know we're getting late in the hour. So just out of curiosity, when it comes to creating when it comes to content creation, I guess, do you have any tips, I guess, in a sense, for how do we create like good content that maybe could kind of help withstand the oversaturation, or how do we come up with some of this good content? If you have any tips or suggestions.
I think that is a truly hard thing. I will say a few things that have really helped me and helped some marketers that I've worked with. One is paying very close attention to your field, meaning what else is being produced out there, what does well, what performs poorly, what things did you really like that did not do well. I think that's a great question to answer, because you will probably be biased to making things that you like, and if you can identify the weaknesses in the sort of chain of what Rand liked but did not perform, right? That is very helpful. The other thing I would say is my best content almost universally comes from in-person conversations or phone conversations, where I talk to people and I start to notice a pattern. Like, gosh, Larry and I talked about this on this webinar. Then I had a conversation with this startup person who's trying to fundraise, and then I met with a woman from this PR agency, and we all talked about this. I should make some content about that, right? Like that's probably on a lot of people's minds. I'm not, I don't exist in I exist in a weird bubble, but I'm trying to serve that same weird bubble. And so if you can live in your bubble and have lots of conversations with human beings in that bubble, I have found that that's led to a lot of my most successful stuff.
So this tip obviously has worked for Rand because of who you are, and you've achieved that success. I'm going to disagree and say that Rand is the kind of the outlier here, and that for us mere mortals, it's incredibly difficult to find these 2 or 5 or 10x contents. It's incredibly difficult. There's all these guides on how to write the next viral hit and all this crap, and I think you should just ignore them. You should just throw it in the trash can and just blog something, just create something, give it a try and see what happens. And the key here is don't kill yourself over it. So like, I'm always surprised at what worked. You know, it's like, what, this piece that I spent like 10 seconds on, like
Yeah.
it's going bananas, really? Like,
Yeah.
there's this concept in startups called the lean startup, and basically what it says is you don't have to go all in. You can just try these things out at very low cost, you know, and then see how it resonates. And you can always backfill kind of the quality later, you know. Like a year ago, my top post was just a list of 5 new features that I thought were interesting, and it went bonkers. It got like hundreds of thousands of views, and I was like, okay, well, now I should
Yeah.
probably, you know, do more around this topic because I know that it's interesting, you know, as opposed to me like kind of coming up with some weird way of coming to that realization in the first place. Yeah, it just the other way to do it is, and this is kind of a hack, it's you just copy existing ideas that did well. So just use BuzzSumo, you know, find something else that the algorithm you know rewarded with 1 million
Yeah.
shares, and then, you know, kind of
Great.
just make it your own, okay? And
Yep.
voila, it'll work because the same reasons why it worked the first time
Yep.
will be the reason why it works the second time. So it's that easy.
Yeah. I
No,
mean, one of the things that I published, I guess Moz published it this morning, right, is my predictions for 2018 in SEO.
mhm.
That's something I've written, I think, 10 years in a row. It works well every year. In
Yep.
fact, it builds on itself, right? Because every year I grade my predictions from the last year. And so the more readers it got last year, the more people want to see, like, hey, was Rand right? And what's his thing for the next year? And so, you know, it has that quality. And it's definitely not a unicorn. It's an upper class donkey, but it does well. You know, it does well. It's
The
consistent.
upper class donkey. That's how I'll rate things from now on.
Yeah. I mean,
I
those middle class
aspire
donkeys.
I aspire to be an upper class donkey.
Well,
Uh,
perfect. And I appreciate, both of your opinions on that part of it. And, I agree too, writing for the PPC Hero blog too, I feel like that's always something we struggle with too, like coming up, what is the content that we want to write about today? So I think, those are tips we use in house when we're coming up with things like what are discussions that are happening around our team and with our clients. And that's the stuff that kind of drives the stuff we write about on PPC Hero, and then too also going back and reviewing like old posts that we wrote a long time ago and seeing what's worked and what hasn't and building off that with new opinions. And obviously the industry changes so much that so much can change on even just a topic from before. So cool. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour here too, so I'm going to try to kind of buzz through these last ones. So we had the question just how about dealing with the rising CPCs. So if we can spend just a quick couple minutes on this piece, and then I want to leave some time for the lightning round. We said that's always an exciting one, and then hopefully have a couple minutes at the end for some questions that have been popping in here too.
so
So
my lightning answer to how to deal with rising CPCs is get high engagement around your brand, get people to know you, like you, prefer you over other things, and your cost per click will generally go down as your engagement and uh, efficacy with your advertising rises.
Yep, I would even advocate killing vanilla search. So I would just do RLSA only, so that we're search remarketing only. I mean, it's just with a $50 cost per click or $25 cost per click, it's like, with a 3% conversion rate, this is not going to work, guys. So what we found is that the click-through rates are 3 to 5 times higher if there's brand affinity, and we find that the conversion rates are 3 to 5 times higher if they've visited your site recently. And if you multiply those two, it's almost a 10x like a difference. So right, because higher click-through rates means lower cost per click. And so, more and more I'm just suggesting, this is not going to work. Why don't we just use RLSA only and try to harvest using search as a means of harvesting demand that was created elsewhere.
yeah, interesting. And like I said, I know we've seen obviously some a lot of increase in CPCs. I was looking at the numbers, I was pulling them yesterday and just looking across year over year, and we saw quite a bit of, I think it's like 50%, 56% across everything. And
Yeah.
more specifically, tablets is where we saw like the biggest increase across that. Tablets and desktop were some of the ones from the data that I was pulling where we saw some big increases. So I know, and I agree. I think those are both some really good strategies to to tackle. It looks like we're getting pretty close to the end here. So I think those are both some really good tips, kind of lightning round tips around how to deal with the rising cost of CPCs. So now that we're getting towards the end, I don't know if we're going to have a lot of time to get into all the
Give us
Q&A.
questions. You give us lightning round questions, and we'll give 10-second or less answers. Go
you
for
got
like
it. You got it. Well, first, let's do with our. Let me just see if we have any in here that I can answer that I'm seeing right off. There's quite a few. Well, let's just go ahead. There is quite a few, so we might have to follow up with these later. But let's go ahead and just do the lightning round for their biggest trends to watch for 2018 and your predictions, your trends and predictions for 2018s for search, social, SEO, content, and all of that. So we can kind of end on that note, and we'll jump into the final Q&A.
Let's see, biggest. So I think that voice search and voice answers are going to keep being huge. There's going to be tons of discussion around them. There's going to be a lot of engagement. I still think it's going to be too early for marketers to truly benefit from most voice answers. Voice search, you can benefit the same way you benefit from keyboard search. But voice answers, really, really hard. I think only a few brands are going to be led into those platforms. I think it's going to be minimal opportunity for the small and medium players. The other big trend that I think we're going to be hearing a ton about is going to continue to be like the AI chatbots, automated marketing, and there's going to be many more like platforms and software that says we will use our machine learning and AI techniques to help you with conversion rate optimization, help you with programmatic online advertising, help you with your organic content, help you with all these kinds of marketing. And I think that, as is pretty typical, 1 in 10 will actually be worthwhile to invest in, and the rest probably will not be, and it'll take a while for the market to sort itself out.
Perfect. Makes sense. What about you, Larry?
Biggest trend for 2018? God, I hope it's chatbots.
I really hope it's chatbots.
Try my chatbot.
But we're rooting for you, man.
Yep, we are, Larry.
Maybe you can just help us out in the 2018 elections. That would be great.
Yes.
Get you on the right side of history.
Amen.
Amen. All right. So we're going to go ahead, and we're at the top of the hour now. So we're just going to jump into, I really appreciate your guys' time today. And like I said, we're not going to have time to get into all these questions. So please feel free to everyone out there listening to tweet in your questions to Larry.
Yeah, we'll answer questions on Twitter for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and shoot those questions there. So we're just going to wrap it up here with a couple offers that we have. So I wanted to just go ahead and Larry's been talking, he mentioned, like I said, trends and prediction is the chat bot. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Larry to give a little bit more information about his offer.
Sure. It's just like we have this product that's in pre-release right now, and would love to give you access to it. It's a way to engage with your customers on Facebook Messenger, but you don't need to be a manual person staffing the chat line. It's like an AI that kind of answers and asks questions automatically to qualify and convert people. So I'd love to have you in this program. Oh, and by the way, Rand has a book coming out this year, and it's kind of a big deal. So make sure you pre-order that one too. I believe it's called Lost and Founder. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you, Larry. That's very kind of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone check those both out. And also, if you'd like to stay up to date on our HeroConf, as I mentioned, we have our HeroConf Austin coming up April 16th through the 18th. Go ahead and mark that box now. We also have our HeroConf London that will be coming up in October. Those are also some events we'd love to have you guys at. But Larry and Rand, I really appreciate your time today. This has been so fun. I've learned so much just from kind of listening and chatting with you guys about all these fun topics. So I really appreciate your time today. And like I said, if anybody has questions, feel free to tweet at us, and really appreciate your time for today.
Thank you, Hannah Penn Marketing, for putting on this event.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you, Cassie, for hosting.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Everyone have a great day.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you. Oh, fist bump, right?
Yeah, bump it.
Fist bump. Thanks, everyone.
That was not rehearsed.